He's also been recognized as the USPTA National Professional of the Year. In 2008, Mark founded McMahon Tennis, which today works with professionals to help find career search and job opportunities. Just this year, he has started a new industry-focused continuing education program called the Certified Racket Sports Executive Program, which is a very intensive 10-month program, and I'd love to hear more about that as well. So let's look forward to and welcome Mark McMahon.
Thank you, Tom. I'm just laughing because I apologised to Tim earlier that I knew I wasn't going to be here this morning. I understand. No worries. All right, I said I was so close. I had no idea that Tom was going to give the presentation he just gave, and it was absolutely sensational, very meaningful, spoke to leadership with the greatest authenticity that I could possibly imagine. And through the beauty of technology, I went to my phone and I searched my sent folder, and I came up with the following. This is from May 24th, 2012. Tom, it was really good to see you last weekend, which happened to be at the Southern Convention. It's been too long. It was great to know how happy you are at Methodist. Well, at the time, right? I know that it must seem like a very long way from the day-to-day country club world of Maryland, and I dare say it's a lot less stressful. USPTA has definitely been through a lot over the past 18 to 24 months. In fact, as I look back, I'd say the association has spent an inordinate amount of time on internal political issues which did not impact member benefits or services in any way. And I go on and give some personal perspective on that. The association is fortunate to have had many individuals who stood up and have been willing to take some pretty hard hits, particularly in the past 12 months. No one, however, has had to endure what you have on both a personal and professional level. I may be one of the few people who have some idea of how much it hurts to be questioned by your peers when your only objective is to make something that you care about better. So, with that being said, Tom, I have the highest regard for you. So ironic that you would give that presentation, which I think took a lot of courage. And I think the message maybe today might be the fact that time offers great perspective. And it gives all of us a chance to think about the things that we enjoy, the things that we're good at, the things that we might rather not do. I saw something yesterday. Actually, it was a blog post or an announcement on a blog post that I follow. And this woman happens to be my career coach. I've been working with her for about 1.5 years now. And she said, make a not-to-do list as opposed to a to-do list. So sometimes, I'll share nuggets from all over the place this way. Sometimes the things that you get maybe, not the things that you proactively go out and seek, but the things that you avoid. And keeping away, I made a personal decision around, that same time to sort of take a little step away from USPTA. I'm glad that the association has welcomed me back the last 5 years because I love being a part of it. I do have a USPTA trick. Remember the executive committee meeting? Beads and trinkets, right? So I got some beads and trinkets. These are some pens. You've got to have something to write, right? I don't know if Tom, Pat included pens or notepads, but we'll throw some out there. And beads and trinkets. So I have your attention now. Hey, AJ. All right, good. All right. Beads and trinkets for the group. Okay, I do like to try and find something the morning that I present that is relative to the presentation. And I found another one, again it just came across the news wire, and it was on social media. Steve Smith, Steve Smith, great base tennis now in Florida. He says the following: be obsessed with improvement, not winning. Winning is a byproduct of developing your skills. Just like building a house, one goes downward to build a foundation. The third little pig took a little more time to build his house out of brick. Steve goes on to say, tennis players should also take their time and build a solid base. I'd have to agree with that. And the reason I mention it is because I think it applies to almost any learning environment, and it certainly applies to the topic that I'm going to talk about today, both this morning and this afternoon. Two different topics, but premise being we should be, and we all are, we hope, in a learning environment. Now, I'm going to spare you the raspy needle on the record of Bob Dylan's "The Times They Are A-Changing" from 1964. I've got a trivia guy in the room that I used to work with, so he may question that, but I think it was 1964 that this song came out, and I've been playing it lately when I've been presenting to club managers and to tennis professionals about the way the industry is changing and has changed. And, you know, maybe let it go for 45 seconds or so, let people think about it, but our industry and our world is changing. And as tennis professionals, or dare I say, racket sports professionals, we need to also adapt to those changes and prepare for what's coming. So today I'm going to be a little bit specific, and maybe from my own personal life lesson, about the fact that you can be happy, and if you are happy in the job market, in what you do, you're going to be more successful. And we might talk about potentially the chicken or the egg and decide what comes first. But you've all heard the quotes. You know, choose to do something that you love, you'll never work a day in your life, for sure. Find out what you like doing best. Get someone to pay you for it. And I feel like I'm doing that now in my life. I have to be just completely blunt with that. So what is it? What does come first? Is it really, you know, the chicken or the egg? Are you better in your job when you're happy? Or are you happy as a result of doing a job that you love? And in the work that I do now, both helping clubs identify talent to hire directors of tennis, directors of racket sports, and in working with coaches and professionals who are aspiring to advance their career and helping them understand what they can be good at, I have this question come up a lot. Well, where does being happy fit into the scale? And I think it's a prerequisite. I think it's something that has to be a primary consideration as you think about what is going to be next for you. So as tennis professionals, there truly is nowhere to hide. We are on show all the time. If you're going to go hide in your office, you know, you're the proverbial dead person walking. It's not going to work. So you're out and in front of people all the time. And I think that the job that you have, the role that you choose, truly does matter. And I also believe strongly that you have an ability to influence, not to control, but to influence what that role is going to be. So I've started putting some process around helping professionals understand where they might best be suited, where they might best have the chance for the greatest success. And the concept is not rocket science. As I tell people, this is something you don't need me or anybody else to do or to help you with. Think about the proverbial SWOT assessment. What are your strengths? What are you not as strong at, your weaknesses? What opportunities might exist for you now or potentially in the future? And what threats exist that will impede or may impede your ability to achieve the goal that you are going after? And in fact, upon reflection, does that goal need to shift or adjust or change? So, you know, I tend to take the position that definitive career goals and even timelines around those goals, the edges need to be squishy. They can't be too firm. Another benefit of age. I've learned that the edges can't be always so firm. So Michelle is not the real person's name, but she's a USPTA professional in the southeastern United States who was hired into a role that she was well suited for and did and performed exceptionally well in, and was promoted. She was promoted as the club was evolving. And as I've talked, if I played our friend Mr. Dillon, the times at her club were changing. Pickleball was coming in, bocce was becoming something that they felt tennis should be responsible for. And this USPTA professional's role was shifted from where she had initially been hired into something very different. And when I first started talking with Michelle, she was very unhappy. And sadly, that unhappiness led to a change. And it was not a change of her choosing. So all of a sudden, someone who was vibrant and happy and successful found themselves in a role that was not necessarily suited for them, and it didn't end well. So if we can be proactive about that, if we can be mindful about that in advance, isn't that a better way of looking at our careers? Could she have changed that? Probably not, given the circumstances. It was just one of those things. Life is not easy. Not everyone gets a trophy. But now I'm pleased to report that 8 months later, she is in the job of her dreams and loves it. And I was coming out of Planet Fitness. I got a text on a Saturday morning, and I literally cried. It was super. So, and I am crying. But seriously, it was so exciting that she had found her place. And it was simply a matter of going after the right thing and doing the groundwork for it. So Michelle did a super job. If you're looking at a new opportunity, you need to think about why the club has that opportunity open. Why does the need exist? And I use the analogy of Match.com. Fortunately, happily married for many years, haven't been on Match.com, but I understand the concept, okay? And from what I hear, you can have photos that don't necessarily relate to the real person. Is that anyone? Yeah. So with that being said, a lot of times I see jobs advertised that look amazing, but the real reason is not ever put out there. And can I change that? No, but the reason that I share it with you is because when I work for clubs, I find out why they're changing that job. And while we can't post it, I can talk about it. I can expose it. And one of my questions to every general manager that I work for is, tell me the reason for this change. Very often they will tell me verbally, they won't write it down. But it's important to understand that. It's fair and only fair to the person that might change their career path, relocate themselves and or their family, to understand the history of the club. So the question is it truly a good fit? And how can we anticipate that? It's a matter of doing some reflection and thinking about the things that you are good at. Remember the SWOT analysis, or I call it a career SWOT assessment. Strengths, weaknesses, the opportunities that exist, the threats that may be there impeding you on achieving your goal. When I talk to people about getting the right job, very often they focus on the cover letter and the resume. And it is an important component. It is a single dimension piece of paper that is supposedly going to be the difference between you having a further contact with that club or not. So yes, it's important, absolutely. It's not the only thing, and I promised Pat that I wouldn't be redundant or repetitive today, but I do believe that how you present yourself publicly in so many ways today, primarily with social media, but also in an event like this today. We just chatted in the men's room, right? We have a relationship. I like the conversation. Well, I think we handle each other professionally, etc. Right? So now that is a part of the growing image. My image, his image, your image. So your brand is happening as we speak, as we breathe. It's right here, right now. And no one's in the back of the room doing this, but I've seen it, right? Not the right brand message, right? Take a walk. It's a better message. Tim would have been like this, so he took a walk, right? I love it. It's perfect. And your brand is built over time. And I want to go back here one more. I believe that while you have a template for your resume, that the resume, and likewise with the cover letter, that both of those items need to be targeted towards the job that you've identified as being the right job for you. People say to me, Mark, how do I change my resume? Do I lie? I make stuff up? So, no. But everybody has a broad, wide range of skills and successes and experiences from their past, from their background, that if the job is the right job, if you've done your homework and reflected on you as a professional and what's right for you, as you look at that job, you're going to be able to highlight those specific aspects of your experiences that fit that job. So when a person gives that, it's about a 16-second look, honestly. Resume, cover letter. There's your future, done. In those 60 seconds, done. You're either in or you're out. That's a scary thing. So the things that stand out better represent something that I'm looking for if I'm hiring. Make sense? So I want to talk about what I consider the hiring marathon or the job search marathon. First 21 miles, don't fall. You don't have to be the best, but you've got to be really good and be in the race. Last 5.2, you need to be the best runner. Step number 1, though, is being in the race. You know, we're at a tennis conference, not a golf conference, but people talk about being in position on Sunday. You cannot get to the final if you don't make the quarters. Can't get to the quarters if you're not in the draw. Can't get in the draw if your game's not good enough. Your game won't be good enough if it's not an all-round game. Your all-round game will leverage your strengths, mitigate your weaknesses. The analogies line up with each one of us as we pursue career choices. So you've got to have a solid game and understand your own game. Touch points. I was trying to think and this is a presentation that I have not given, but I have given it hundreds of times individually. But I thought to myself, what are those things that we do every time we interact with a search committee or a general manager or a search consultant in aspiring for this job that is going to bring us happiness and bring the club happiness, the win-win scenario. I've called them touch points, and there are anywhere from 4 to 8 touch points that I identify, in fact, that I practice during search assignments. And I think each one of them require deep and due consideration, thought, preparation, and practice. So think about the fact that the cover letter and the resume, that 90 seconds maybe, that those 2 one-dimensional pieces are given, that's just the first 2 touch points. If I read Tom Douglas, I make people feel great when they come to my tennis facility. I enjoy putting smiles on people's faces so that they leave like they're leaving Disney World. So that sounds kind of corny, but that would get my attention. You're going to hear me use the phrase, tell me who you are and why you do what you do, over and over and over again. Tell me who you are and why you do what you do. In those 3 sentences, Tom told me he likes making people happy using tennis as the vehicle, and he gave me an imagination of someone walking out of the happiest place on earth. That would get my attention. Now, he may end up being full of hot air, but he's going to get another 30 seconds, maybe another minute and a half. It was so good. So the touch points are numerous. I would go to Google or probably LinkedIn and search Tom Douglas. Is that happiness message consistent with his profile? are all of his posts, all of his comments, all of the articles that he's written, all of the Google PDFs from different clubs, different jobs, are they all consistent with the message that he has conveyed initially? If they are, we keep going. The telephone conversation, the questionnaires, video interviews, in-person interviews, touch points. At each touch point, let's think about what we're looking for. We're looking for alignment. Alignment. The search committee, the general manager, they're asking the question, how can this person help us? How can this person help us look good? How can this person make my kids feel good? How can this person help my wife improve her tennis game? How can this person help me? Our job, pretty simple. First thing that we taught the USTA tennis service reps in 2005. We brought in an outside firm to teach them the most important question that they had to ask every facility person that they met all over the country. Hi, I'm Mark McMahon from the USTA. How can I help you? Simple, fundamental. It is missed so often. So the underlying message is, this is who I am, this is what I do. How can who I am and what I do help you? That's the alignment. That's the connection point at every touch point. Cover letter, resume, social media, telephone interview, questionnaire, personal interview. It is a lot. It's a lot of work, but it's simple. It's not difficult. This slide I changed. So the first touch point, application, cover letter, resume. I changed the slide. The first bullet point on this slide said, resume, cover letter, horror stories. And it was because it was fresh in my mind when I was putting it together. I was in the midst of taking applications on a job that we're helping a club with in Florida. And if I told you that we get some bad ones, you would believe it. How about an email that has the resume baked within the email? There's no separate resume. How about, I am applying for the job you had listed. Best wishes, Tom. No, the instructions were pretty clear. Here's the general manager's name, blah, blah. It is unfathomable. You do not need me to tell you how to do this, but find a friend, phone a friend, find a friend, and make sure that they know how to do that. If you have a friend who's doing this, help them out, because you can't believe it's happening. It happens. And it's not just English as second language. It has nothing to do with that. It is sometimes the most ridiculous thing. The purpose of your cover letter and resume is to do two things, the two C's. Confidence and curiosity. Enough confidence to want to read the next minute and a half, and enough curiosity to say, I want to find out more. I have questions for this person. This person has piqued my interest. So it's an introduction. It's taking that message of who you are, why you do what you do, and how you can connect, right? And the word that's italicized is authentic. When you connect, and this is why the reflection, go back to the SWOT assessment. This is why the reflection on your skills, your biases and preferences and the things that you want to do professionally is so critical, because to actually align with the role, it has to be authentic. You can probably bluff your way through, and it's happened, the cover letter and the resume, and maybe even the social media. Generally not the social media. The truth starts to bubble up. But it has to be authentic. You have to truly be a good fit with what the needs of the employer is. And it doesn't matter if it's tennis or technology. You know, there might be a lot more different jobs where, what was the company's name, Tom? Sorry, I'm dragging the Internet Technology? No, Internet. What was your son's company's name?
Ultimate Software.
Ultimate Software. There's probably, you know, tens of thousands of jobs at Ultimate Software, and you might be able to move around between them. But if you're, you know, if you find yourself in the wrong job, it's not going to last long. So it has to be authentic, and this is where the happiness really bubbles up. This is where the chance for success comes in A, getting a job, and B, making it sustainable. So you think about people who have been in jobs for 20, 25, 30 years, and some, boy, they kind of, you know, stayed, or they're boring, or what. No, it's just a good fit. Works. It's okay. So let's have a look. The telephone conversation. A couple of different ways this can happen. Informally or formally, and don't be misled, they are both interviews. You get a call from the search committee chair or someone like me and say, "Hey, Jorge, how you doing?" "Yeah, good. Yeah, tell me about the tennis center. How, you know, what do you do there?" "Sounds pretty casual. We're just shooting the breeze, right?" No, it's an interview. It's just my way of asking the question. Whereas, you know, "Jorge, this is Mr. McMahon from you know, XYZ Country Club, and I'd like to start our interview." Well, that's definitely an interview. They're both interviews. It's just the way you go about it. And during that conversation, Jorge's purpose, his strengths, his alignment has to shine through and be consistent with the resume, with the cover letter, with the social media that's out there. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Don't tell them how good you are at the things you're good at. Think about that. Tell me a little bit about yourself. "I am really good at working with junior players. I have high performance certification. I took a 10 and under specialty, and now I actually give presentations on 10 and under. And I am a great believer in using teaching tools. I've done work with Mike Barrell and his organization and the Whiz Tennis concept. I'm totally up on that. In fact, I've done a lot of early childhood education work. I am really good at that." And I said, "Well, Mr. McMahon, we're not sure that's going to be really well suited for our Naples Country Club, where most of our members are 70 years or older." But meanwhile, Mark McMahon has butchered the interview, telling this person how good they are at doing something that's not relevant. I shouldn't have been on the phone call because my strengths are in juniors, not in seniors. So this is the alignment. Practice. I did some work recently, in 2019. Someone had been at a club for 26 years. They were 54 years old. They were looking at a job in the Northeast, and they had not interviewed in that period of time. And we did 3 or 4 sessions on interviewing. This is someone I admire as a professional. I just spend more time on interviews than he did. So it just made sense. You know, if I needed to ingrain myself into something he was doing, I would go to this guy for counsel. He came to me for counsel because this is something that I do now. Practice, practice, practice. Your wife, your girlfriend, your husband, your boyfriend, your uncle, your aunt, write a list of questions. Rewrite a list of questions. Work on the eye contact. Work on keeping the answers relative. We'll talk about that in a minute. Social media, LinkedIn, it's your online resume. If you don't trip up, you've got a great cover letter, you've got a great resume, and I go to your social media, and you're in, you know, it's got to be politically correct these days, but, you know, you're out there just kicking up a storm and having a grand old time, and, you know, you've got little asterisks instead of letters in words on your social media. I mean, it's okay, I'm not criticizing it, but generally a conservative club is not going to want that person as their director of tennis. So if you want to go and write code, or you want to work in a inside sales position, or something where you're not customer facing, there's not a branding issue or a reputational concern, I'm not judging how people live their lives. I'm simply saying it has to align with the objective of your prospective employer. Does that make sense? Does that work? Yeah? Reasonable? Right? your involvement in the industry, everyone talks about it, record it, memorialize it. Make sure that you can be known genuinely, authentically, for what you actually do and believe. A search committee wants to be proud of you. They want to be able to walk in and say, I served on the search committee and hired JD. He's the best. Well, geez, I hate to tell you this, Mr. McMahon, but I just saw JD's Instagram feed, and I think you made a mistake. The search committee doesn't want to hear that. So, consistency. Now I'm painting a negative picture of social media. How about the positive side? LinkedIn is a great opportunity to talk about things you believe in, things that you are good at, knowledge that you want to share. Everyone in this room has information, knowledge, institutional, career-wise, experiential, that is valuable to other people. This LinkedIn gives you a chance to share that and help yourself in the job market. Questionnaires. It baffles me again. A question is asked, tell us how in the past you have driven increased participation in a event program that seems rather boring or participation is down. Answer that question for us. And the answer might start off with, I think social events are really important at every club, and it goes into a dissertation about the mechanics and the planning and the working of one single event. And I'm talking about everything from the menu to the types of balls that we use to the draw format, etc. Now you might say, well, gee, that's sort of what they asked for. They asked, how do we increase participation in an event calendar that otherwise is kind of boring? Well, if I'd asked the question, tell us about one of your most successful events and the way that event was put together, then the answer may be more appropriate. But when the question is asked, tell us how you increase participation, the key is to answer that particular question. What dialogue, what visibility, what communication, what committee involvement. How have you worked to gather and garner excitement and engagement and participation? The question in that instance is more about communication than it is about event management. So it's important to repeat the words that are in a question in the answer. And that makes sure that you are on task, that you are on subject. Do I need to say spell check? And do I need to say, realistically, conversation check? How does it sound? Read it back, because that's what's going to happen to your answer. Word doc versus PDF, I just prefer PDF. Can't be changed, more stable. If you use like an Apple program, it sometimes will not open correctly on a Windows-based computer. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. PDF's a lot safer. The 2 or 3 things. So the questionnaire is also an early warning system. You've got 2 early warning systems when you're looking at roles. One is the position profile. Hopefully, it defines the needs and expectations of the club clearly. I'd like to think that the professional people who do it do a good job. I know a lot of clubs do very good jobs. And then there was a job listed in Austin, Texas recently on the USPTA website, and it made me cringe. I don't know if anyone saw it. It was at Austin Country Club, and it was for an executive director. You saw the job, right?
Yes.
What was the job for?
It actually was for a junior director.
It was actually director of tennis.
Director.
Yeah, because I talked to someone yesterday who had applied for it. And he actually talked, finally, after 3 calls, he got a call back from the HR person, and the HR person is listed for the job as the contact person, so she's not returning calls, which is not a good way of garnering candidates. It's listed as executive director, and then it takes up about 17 pages because it's the job description. We're going to talk this afternoon about the difference between job descriptions and expectations, and this was the actual job description. So it was a really, really tough way of discerning what the priorities are. So the early warning systems should be the position profile. The next one is what questions are you asked, and try and discern that either through the telephone interview or the questionnaire. You'll get one or the other or both at an early stage. That will tell you what to prepare for your interview, because you'll know immediately what the key questions are, what the key points are. The interviews, as I said, they take place over a myriad of different mediums, including the obvious, the in-person. Verify the dress. What should you wear? It is a whole lot safer to be overdressed than to be underdressed. And typically for men, I give the instruction, dark sports coat and slacks or suit, light coloured shirt, unobvious tie. You don't want a tie that has, like a tongue or a rose coming out of it or something, right? Keep it simple, understated, professional, appropriate, commensurate dress for women. Homework. Go back to the start. And I've been guilty of this, not necessarily on job searches, but you want to get ahead. You want to go to the next thing. So you're reading all the information about, where you need to book your flight to and what hotel you're going to stay in, and you're talking to people on the phone. You're all pumped up about this job. Go back and think and look and reflect what their needs were. What did they express? What's happened during the interviews today or the questionnaires today? Practice. I cannot impress that enough. Practice the interview. Okay? Oh, there's one other thing that I think is a great phrase in an interview. Number one, what's the perfect length of an answer? Anyone want to take a guess at that? Tell me about your experience running women's teams. How long could you talk on that subject? Too long. The interview's not that long. All right. How long? What's the perfect length of an answer?
1 minute.
Under a minute. I agree.
I would say 90 seconds.
Yeah. You and I are the same though. Oh, hey, we like to talk. I think after a minute, I'm like, okay, I got it. I'm there. Right? I'm there. Now, there's a phrase though that helps determine whether you do have it. The phrase is simple. Did I answer the question? Is that what you were looking for? Did I answer your question? I hope that answers the question. If they want to follow up, they'll follow up. Very simple check-in. And that's a good practice in life. Did I answer the question for you? Does that make sense? That makes sense is a little more persuasive. Like, of course it made sense, right? Does that make sense? Right? But checking in is a really good idea, and not talking too much is an even better idea. Typical interview. Walk in, introductions. I'm going to tell a story. It is a true story, and it probably cost someone a job. It was in the South or Southwest United States. Person walked into the interview. It was the 6 finalists, and unbeknownst to the candidate, who had lived in the state before and didn't live in the state anymore, one of the people on the search committee he had grown up with. He didn't know it. Didn't know he was going to be in there. And he walked into the interview, and there's a long conference table, and he's like, Mr. General Manager, Mr. Tennis Chair, And then he looks at this guy and he screams out his young 20-year-old nickname, "How are you? Good." It was shocking. This is a conservative club, and the poor gentleman on the search committee, who was the same age as the candidate, he was natural. He said, good to see you too, da, da, da. In the committee reflections, when they were talking about who they liked and maybe who they didn't, that was the first thing when it got down to a couple of people that ended up eliminating him. What was the concern? Anyone want to take a wild guess?
Too casual?
Too familiar with the members, that he would become too buddy-buddy, not kind of lose that line. Simple thing, because normally you would say be friendly, have eye contact, smile, be gregarious and engaged. He just crossed the line, and using the person's nickname was probably the thing that did it. If he'd said, Mr. Jones, good to see you, maybe a hug would have been fine. But it crossed the line. So this person is interviewing in a couple of jobs in the next few weeks. So I think that lesson has been learned. Opening statement. You've got 2 minutes, Todd. Tell us about yourself and why this job is important for you. All right? Stay with what has gotten you there. So normally you've had an interview by telephone or Skype or video, or you've answered the questionnaire, or you've done both. You go back to your resume and your cover letter, you've highlighted some things in your resume, your cover letter points to those things and connects it to the job. Stay on message. Don't introduce, by the way, did I tell you? Because now the committee, even a general manager and one other person, they've got 5 or 6 people coming through, minimum. They're focused on getting through the day, staying on task, concentrating on the job at hand, making a great decision. They don't want new information. They want to validate what they think they know and get to know the person. Because ultimately, they're hiring the person, not necessarily the skills. Answer the questions that are asked. Definitely no more than 2 questions from you. 1 is better, with a statement, look, I'm sure I'll have lots of questions. I know today is busy for you. I look forward to the chance of returning and having all those questions answered. Respectful of their time, showing that you are prepared, that yes, you do have questions. But a search committee of 5, particularly when you have a member-owned club, which a lot of members, USPTA members work in, you have a general manager and a search committee. The search committee doesn't necessarily understand the mechanics of the operation, but their job is to hire the new director of tennis. Well, are you comfortable with the split between the director of tennis and the assistant pros? Is that something you plan to continue? That's a pretty reasonable question, don't you think? Right? But it's not for that avenue. That would, at the very least, go to the general manager in a follow-on. Closing statement, same thing. No new information. Reiterate. You've heard the story. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Tell them what you told them. Principle applies to the interview as well. Thank you note, email. It happens quickly today. We'll keep tracking here. Preparation equals confidence. In my coaching capacity these days, it has pleasantly surprised me, so that sounds a little more morbid. I'm really pleased to learn how many people get nervous. I get incredibly nervous. One of the ways that I'm dealing with being nervous is by telling you that I get incredibly nervous. And preparation has a way of minimizing, at least mitigating, that nervousness, because you know your stuff. Same thing when you think about interviewing. Prepare. And the preparation is about this conversation, your own reflection, connecting back to that need, and staying focused on the things that have gotten you to that point today. Let them really understand who you are. Let them understand why you do what you do and how that will make them and their family feel good. How that will make the general manager feel secure and assured about you as a business person. So, what's the takeaway? I use tennis as an analogy. We all know tennis. So you're always working on your game. I am not going to play in the National Hardcourt Championships on Southern California concrete. That's not where I'm going to fit. I'm going to do a lot better on a nice, soft clay court in Southeast Florida or Southwest Florida. So pick the role. Make sure that you're able to highlight why that role is important to you. The cover letter connects the needs with your strengths. Your resume highlights those strengths. Your cover letter points to those strengths and connects those strengths back to the needs of the club. Public profile needs to remain consistent. The SWOT assessment is something that it should be, in my view, an ongoing exercise. Again, not necessarily in a formal setting. It could be when you have your head on the pillow. It can be when you have your cup of coffee on a Sunday morning. Where am I? What am I good at? What do I need to work on? What opportunities haven't I thought about? And ultimately, making sure that you have a concept or an ability to practice. A willingness, I guess, is the term. A willingness to practice. So, I think happiness does matter. I've never been happier professionally than doing what I do today. And, you know, the aim is, yeah, you're going to make a living, but the purpose is I now get to help people in the way I feel like they need to be helped. Clubs, when they're hiring, professionals, when they're being a professional, advancing their careers. So I think you need to be high level and you need to be tactical. So think of the big picture and be very, very pragmatic about how you can get there. Each of those touch points, serving for the match. You definitely want to work on your game. So that's with 58 seconds on the clock. That's what I have for you. I'll take a question or two, but I know we have to move on. So thank you for your time and attention. Jorge.
I got two questions. My first question.
I knew you would have two questions.
I'll go with one.
No, I'm kidding.
What is your recommendation when they ask what are your weaknesses? What is your recommendation how to answer that question? So I go with that.
Yeah, so the question is, for the purpose of the recording, is tell us about your weaknesses, correct?
Yeah.
And the key there is that we all have weaknesses. And you've got the needs of the club clearly defined in your mind. If you have a weakness that aligns with one of their needs, meaning that if they're looking for much more organization in pre-season planning and communication for their Ladies League program, and that is an area that you have been whacked on for a long, long time. It's just not something you delegate it to someone in your current role because you do not like dealing with that. Correct? We'll use that as the example. You're in the wrong interview to start with. So the answer to the question is, we all have weaknesses. What weakness is going to be less highlighted, less challenging to this group? And I would always put it in the terms that one of the things that I ensure that I have someone on my team highly skilled in is this, because I prefer to focus my time and attention on these 3 or 4 things. which happen to be, I like to focus my attention on these 3 or 4 things. What do you think those 3 or 4 things are that I like to focus my time on? Anyone?
What you're good at.
Well, I'm good at, which is, oh, come on. I'm in the interview.
Your strengths.
My strengths, which align with
What the club needs.
bingo. Oh, geez, I was nervous I wasn't going to get that. I was considering myself missing the boat at that point. But the 3 or 4 things I prefer to spend my time at are 1, 2, 3, and 4. They know that those were the 3 or 4 things that have been talked about, right? The thing that my weakness, the thing that I'm not as strong at, because I prefer to focus my time here, so I haven't really said I'm weak, I just said I prefer to focus my time here, but this thing, I always ensure that I have someone around me that is very, very good at that. So I think that is an answer that is honest and real, and it shows a lot of other skills, important skills here, organization, management skills over here, making sure you have the right people. Did that answer your question?
That answered my question. Second question, real quick. What is your recommendation if the job is offered to you and they give you the conditions right away? Should you say, yes, I take the condition right away because you're clear, or always to pause and say, can I get back to you after I sleep on it?
Yeah, I'd love to take your job. I am so excited about being here. As your new director of tennis, I promise you I will never make a rash decision. I will never make a decision without giving it due consideration. I'm going to go home, I'm going to reflect upon the offer, I'm going to talk to my wife about it, my husband about it, and I'm going to give you a call by 4 p.m. tomorrow. Would that be acceptable, Jorge? Can we live with that? All right? Because if they were to push that issue, I would do 2 things. I'd ask the question, why? Why is it so important? Would you mind if I asked why you need an answer today? And you might learn something, right? You're still not going to give the answer, but you might learn something else about the club, right? It also shows, again, good thought and management because you're thinking through the situation. But you're not going to give an answer on the day. No.
Thank you.
Are we there?
Yes.
Pat? All right. Thank you, everybody. All right.